This is a project about ADHD. The first question says, how many students with ADHD are currently being served in the U.S.? In the U.S., about 7% of the children are being treated for ADHD. How has the number of students identified increased in the recent years? What are some of the reported reasons for that increase? It's increased about 30% since 1990s. This can be several categories or several reasons. I've been trying to search, but I didn't find the exact thing. So what I have found, and I'll be discussing with you guys, is ADHD does have a role in the environmental things. They might not be able to see it, but if you've been abused, or if you've had any psychological problems in your life, or big life problems that have happened, that could be playing a role in your time focus. So that could be that. I honestly don't know. My answer might be wrong, I don't know, but this is what I have with that so far. Also, that each year we study, someone studies more and more about ADHD, so they become more familiar with it. So maybe that year we weren't really familiar with ADHD, so we didn't really focus on students who had problems. We're like, oh, this is that, and we didn't categorize it into ADHD. So now they're becoming more familiar with ADHD and can focus on it and see, hey, this is what problems lead to ADHD, and this leads to this kind of behavior, and see that. So that also could be a increase in the number of ADHD too. Another factor that I feel that is important is how active you are, or how active the parent is. Yes, since some people are born with it, or genetics that could tie to your ADHD, having ADHD, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on being active. Our generation, I think, is considered lazy. We don't work as hard as the other generations, so maybe since we're not as active as the other generations, more people can figure out, hey, this person's having more trouble in this, because back then they worked in the morning, they went to school, they worked at night, so we didn't have all the energy that we have now. Now our generation, we go to school, maybe we work, maybe we don't go out and do our farm work, or maybe some do, but most people don't do farm work. We just sit down and watch TV. So that can really play a factor into figuring out about ADHD. What are the specific behaviors of students with ADHD, and what ways do we characterize and make it difficult for students to learn and participate? There's 3 different types of ADHD, and I didn't know that before this assignment. So the first one focuses more about having a hard time paying attention. You can't really pay attention to really focus on listening to people, or finishing a task, or being organized with your homework. That's what that one means. The other one is the hyperactive, and this is when we cannot stay seated, and you're always having to be on the go. You're always up and down. You can't stay seated for a long time. You cannot focus on one project like the other one. You cannot complete tasks. You just cannot sit still, pretty much. The other one has to do with staying focused. There is a third one, and that's the combination of both. I didn't know there, like I said, I didn't know there was categorized. I have ADHD personally. I got diagnosed when I was in 2nd grade. I did attend special ed in my classes for reading and all those subjects that I really struggled. So I did have to go on, and I couldn't just stay with my friends. So I had to go on, and I had a parent sit with me in every class, and then that at the end of each 15-minute class, I got together with the special ed teacher. We did our homework, or we talked about what happened in class, because all of this information that goes to one person, I didn't focus. I couldn't remember what happened or what they just said. I couldn't read chapters at a time and know what they were talking about. I read a page and I forgot what was even happening. So that's why I had to get more help and go to special ed and have those parents sit with me. But there are 3 different types of ADHD. So they're gonna, if you ever have to go get ADHD, the student will have to get categorized in which category they are, and then they can figure out what they can do to help you. Now, this isn't the question, but for the, you have to take the test, get quizzed out. You have to, see. So it's not just say, hey, you have ADHD. You have to show them that you have ADHD. So there's several categories that you have to follow, certain tests that you have to take, and teachers really have to watch. And it can't just happen one time. It has to happen within 3 to 6 months, I think, of the same activity happening. It can't just be 1, 2, 3, So it does take a lot of time for people to figure out that they do have ADHD. But back on track, sorry. In what ways do you characterize and make it difficult for students to learn and participate in school? This one is kind of hard. There is different, like I said, there's different categories, there's different behavior types. So the biggest challenges, I think, for schools are having, staying on task for a certain project, or what else did I say? Or sitting for a long period of time. So these 45-minute classes or these hour classes might have a really hard effect on the kids with ADHD who cannot sit still, who's always has to be active, or who's going. It might not have as much as effect for those people who have trouble focusing, even though it could. So you have to see what category there are, but the main categories for all ADHD is staying focused and staying seated for a long period of time, and remembering what would just happen, or what the teachers were just explaining, or what the chapter, whatever category or whatever subject you were in, what they were talking about in that subject. Do all students with ADHD demonstrate the same characteristics or degree of behavior? No, they do not. ADHD, I didn't know, but they do have more of a behavior problem. It could be linked to the medicine, it could not be, I don't know. But that they do have more of a thing. They don't really know. They might not know, hey, shouldn't say this. They might not have a filter, blah, blah. And I don't really know. I'm not a researcher. I'm not that. But there, it does say that there is a link that they do have more behavior problems. Also, they don't really, but there are different, like I said, there's 3 different categories in them. So there are different things. Some might have to go to special ed, and some might not have to. So I don't think that there is the same kind of ADHD and the same kind of behavior for everyone who has ADHD. I don't think so, because there are 3 ADHD. There was all the same. You wouldn't have to. You would all just be considered to go to special ed and not have to do that. But since some have to go to special ed and some don't, or some might have more behavior and might speak out more than other people who have ADHD, that all plays a role in this. According to the IDEA 2004, under what category are students who have a disability or who have ADHD? This was a difficult question for me too. I didn't really understand what the question was asking. There are 2 types of things. I found the 504 plan, and that's what the schools, public schools or any type of school, I think, really follow the 504 plan for those ADHD people, and maybe for those who have behave or have something wrong, but they aren't linked to ADHD. The other one I've heard of and that talked about it is the DSM-5. So that is in the IDEA 2004, but I don't know if that was a correct answer, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but that's what I figured out from that question. Discuss the effective class-wide interventions for all students, especially for those who display characteristics of ADHD. So this is kind of what I had to do as a kid, and so from the book too. So it's just a little bit of both. You have to take breaks. You can't sit in a classroom for 45 minutes to 2 hours, especially for those, like for high school. I don't know if you guys did it, but we had an extended time for every Wednesday and Thursday. So each class we separated every other class period for each day. So the odds were on this day and the evens were on this day. And those class periods ran for 2 hours or however, for an hour and 45 minutes, whatever the time was, I can't remember, but we needed to have time breaks or break times. And for those kids who have ADHD, to get up, refresh your brains, get some fresh air, and not have to be seated at the whole time, and get up and move so they can stay focused for the other class time that is left. Also, have extended time for homework and tests. I didn't really have extended time for the homework, but I did for tests. Instead of taking the test for the certain amount for the class period, I had extended time. So I had special ed time, and I had the classrooms. So I couldn't pick one of my classes, but I had special ed class. So if I didn't finish my test during the time that it took for the class period, the teachers took it out, and I didn't take my test in that classroom. I took it in my special ed classroom where I didn't have any distractions, because distractions really did bug me, and when I was timed taking a test, I freaked out. I did terrible. I forgot everything what I was doing. And also when I got the test, like I said, I forgot everything. And so having that para read to me so I can actually understand what the question was helped me out a ton. And I did better on those tests than when I read the test and was in the classroom. Also have time to take the test in a quiet place and not have those distractions. So if the students or whoever needs a quiet time or quiet place to take the test, have them be able to do that, and maybe have them go to the library or certain places if they're not in the special ed but still need that time to take those tests quietly. Having IEPs, if you're in that special ed classroom, is very important for all you guys to be on the same page, and to know, like, for a parent, what to do if your kid is having those behaviors at home, or needing help on homework, or can't focus at home, blah blah. So being all on the same page for the IEPs are very important. Also, another thing for classrooms to do is having the ADHD. See, this could be an effect. So the ADHD people, or who has ADHD, have them sit at the back of the room. This could make them have more not focused enough, because they have more distractions and they're not seated at the front of the room. But if they're seated at the back of the room, they can stand up, they can get up, they can move around and not be seated at the thing. Because for me, I instantly have to move 24/7. I can't stay seated at the same seat for a long periods of time. I have to be getting up and moving. For me to remember anything, I have to be doing something. So if I'm just sitting here reading my thing, I won't remember. But if I'm doing something, it's really weird. But if I'm like either tapping my toes or getting back and forth, walking back and forth while I study, I remember those things more and more when I'm taking my test. Also, help them learn to control their anger. So if they're having angers, you need to not be angry at them, because it's not technically their fault. It could be other things that are causing it, but you need to be gentle on them and say, hey, this isn't how you do this kind of behavior, but and this is how you do that, but it's okay, I'll forgive you this time. But you need to be giving them positive reinforcements all the time, and not just crashing them down, because they might not have that they're not very stable. So like they could be more tender with their anger and lash out, or say like if you bumped into something like Will did, he got angry at the problem for that person who bumped into him when they didn't mean to. So it could just be that. Also, this might be hard if they're not in special ed classrooms, but reducing the amount of reading. So for those people who are normal, have them read the chapters, but with those people who have trouble reading and remembering, maybe cut the chapters in half and talk to them, or you sit down one-on-one after school or whenever it was and go through each page, read it together, and talk about each page so they can know what's happening and not just say at the end of the chapter, hey, what happened? Because like for me, for instance, whenever I read a page, I'm like, I don't know what that just meant, or I couldn't remember what I just read. So when I had to take my test for those reading things, I failed them because I didn't remember what was happening. So then that's when I went into special ed and got that para and read the book to her, and we talked about it each page, and I did better on my test because that one-on-one interactions, and I could remember, hey, this is what happened, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. Encourage them to speak. Some kids are very shy. Like I did not speak at all whenever we had a class discussion because I was scared that I didn't do it right, or I didn't understand the problem correct. So I didn't speak out at all. So if you need to encourage them to speak out. And if they did something wrong, you can't just say, hey, that's wrong. You need to say, hey, that's a good idea, but I'm not quite looking for that, but that is an excellent answer, and I'll remember that for the next one, or something like that. So you do need that positive reinforcement. For math, you should let them do their using graph paper or whatever they're really good at, and let them use that on a math test because they're comfortable with that, and so they might do better on that. Also for organization is a big one. You need to let them do what works for them. They know what they can do and what works for them by the time. Maybe not when they're younger, but for like me for college, I know what I can do or what I need to do different than norm or the other people because I've had ADHD my whole life pretty much. And so I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So maybe figure out like have different things and seeing how their better organization for their classroom, their homework, for whatever in life they need. So figure out what their works, like a computer, a smartphone, or whatever, and see what works for them. Pretty much just giving them positive reinforcement is the last one. You don't want them to be getting negative reinforcement because you're scaring them to answer or to do things. You're like crushing their self-esteem pretty much. That is what I have for this ADHD project. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a good Easter. Bye.